All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining our August version of the Dallas-Fort Worth Power Platform user group. And we're excited today to be talking about all things Power Platform, including the latest and greatest news that Vinay is bringing us in the Power Platform world. And I will be providing an overview of the Creator Kit, how to install, and things to consider and things to know before you get started with it. And just a quick intro to our user group. We try and meet every month of the year. We used to be quarterly, but now this year we've been trying to be more consistent with our meetup, and we'd love for you to join us next month as well. I will have a QR code at the end of the presentation. If you're not a member of the user group, feel free to join our user group so you can stay up to date on upcoming events and updates. I am Geetha Sivasailam. I am a solutions architect and the Power Platform lead at Artist Consulting. I'm also a business applications MVP. There's my blog post there, and I often tweet and share about my trials and tribulations with the platform and things that I learn. So feel free to give me a follow, and always happy to help. And then we also have Ben Beckman, who is my colleague at Artist Consulting. He's also a principal consultant, and he is also our co-founder of the user group. He's unable to join us today, but we hope to see him the next time around. Just a quick overview of our agenda here. We will look at our events and then just upcoming events for the Power Platform domain. And then we'll have Vinay share the recent set of news and announcements in the Power Platform ecosystem. And I will provide an overview of the Creator Kit and how you can get started using that. And then the rest of the time, if we still have time and we don't run out of it, then we always enjoy having an open forum where we can have Q&A and use that as a time to collaborate on all things Power Platform. Another quick list of events here. So we have Dynamics Con Live happening in San Antonio, September 14 to 16. There's the link for that. I will be there, and I do have a session that I'm going to be presenting. And then there's the Power Platform Conference, the September 18 to 23 in Orlando. That's one of our biggest conferences this year, focused on all things Power Platform. And we have a code for our user group. And also, because I'm a speaker, I do have another code too. If you plan on attending the conference, feel free to use our codes here. And then there is the Power EduCon happening in Chicago. September seems to be like a conference month. Several good conferences happening in the US. And I hope to see you all around there. If you're there, say hi, and I would love to catch up with you at the event. All right. Next up, we have Vinay, who is a director at Capgemini, and he comes with several years of industry experience, working across all sorts of Microsoft Azure and Power Platform ecosystem and services. And he is here to share the latest news and announcements in the Power Platform. All yours, Vinay. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Geetha, pleasure to be with the user group today. So let me share my screen and get started. Let me know if you can see my screen, and I'll put it on full screen.
I see it.
Yeah, so I have two monitors. So if I'm not looking at the camera, which means I'm looking at my bigger screen. Yeah, so what I'm going to cover is the key announcements in the Power Platform space in the last 1 month since the previous user group meeting. Now, obviously, Power Platform is big. I might have missed some small announcements here and there, so please excuse that. But these are the key announcements that have happened in the last 1 month. The biggest of them is the collaboration controls. I'm really surprised how the entire Power Platform community has missed what collaboration controls mean and what the power they bring to the platform. And the collaboration controls, they were earlier in private preview. They were available to few select partner companies. I was one of those early adopters of collaboration control. And now they're in public preview, which means Microsoft has made the blogs, the articles, the controls, which are part of the collaboration control public. I have more slides coming on that, and I'll cover that in more detail. And then I can also do some demos today. I believe I have 30 minutes, so we should have enough time to cover the collaboration controls and then the other demos. The next announcement is around error handling. Error handling was introduced around 2 years back. It was in experimental stage for 2 years. It has graduated to preview. What it means is going forward, error handling will be enabled by default for all new applications. Your existing apps will not be impacted, but for new applications, you can use error handling. We'll cover more details in the subsequent slide. There's a new grid control, which is an editable, scrollable grid control. Those who come from SharePoint background have been missing the SharePoint list editable grid control. So the similar kind of capability comes to model-driven app, and the grid control is now public preview. Gradually, the idea is that Microsoft will bring up the features of the grid control, and it will replace the default grid control, which is existing today. There's a new version of Power Platform build tools, which is called version 2.0. And there are new monthly updates to the Power Platform CLI. With the new version of the CLI, there is a new command which allows you to create a Canvas app for an API. So if you have a REST API, which you have created a custom connector, and you want to test the custom connector, so you can use a Power Apps command or PLI command and then create an app. It will create for each of the actions in your custom connector. It will create the controls, the input and the output, allowing it to play. There's a lot of background noise. I'm not sure whose line it is coming from, but I can hear some background. If you can go on mute. Thanks.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So sorry, I lost my flow. So I was saying the next announcement was on the PLI custom command to create a Canvas app based on the REST API. And the last announcement is around Dataverse ability for admins to configure their environment so that Dataverse Canvas apps are created inside the Dataverse by default. Earlier, it was possible that Canvas apps could be created outside of Dataverse. The solution, the Canvas app is outside of the solution of the Dataverse. It cannot apply, you cannot apply ALM on top of that. So with the new configuration, admins can enforce for their environment that all Canvas apps get created inside the Dataverse. Now with this, we'll deep dive into each of the major announcements which you see on this slide. The first big announcement, as I mentioned earlier, is the release of collaboration controls. What the collaboration controls allow you to do is they allow you to bring in a model-driven app, bring it inside Microsoft Teams, and then within the model-driven app, you can add features like approvals, tasks, planners, files, meetings, and notes to your model-driven app. So in a way, you're creating a mini CRM kind of application to your model-driven app based on your model-driven app. This requires the full version of Dataverse. It does not work with the free version of Dataverse that comes with Microsoft Teams. Apart from the controls that Microsoft provides, there is also an API if you need to call any of the collaboration control features programmatically. For example, when a new record is created, you want to inject or hydrate few tasks. Again, there's an API which is exposed by Microsoft, documented by Microsoft, and information is available in the Microsoft documents. Similarly, they've also released custom connector. So if you want to programmatically call the collaboration control features from a Power Automate workflow or another Power App, so there's a custom connector which is available to you. There are virtual tables which are available to you. Now, behind the scenes, this brings in the power of M365. Microsoft did not reinvent the wheel. What they're really doing is behind the scenes, they are using the power of Exchange calendars, Microsoft bookings, planner task, Outlook calendars, and so on. And they bring it seamlessly. They provide a unified interface to the end user. The end user does not have to do context switching between different applications. Now, this is better understood if I give you a quick demo of what does the collaboration controls means. Now I'm going to use a click-through demo, which is available in PowerPoint, but at any point of time, if you want me to see more details of the demo, I have this working demo available in my environment, so I can show you the live demo in my environment. So give me 1 second. I'm just trying to go to the right screen. There are too many screens which are open. So this is a live demo. Now, in the interest of time, I'll use the PowerPoint demo, but this is a, it's not just slideware. So these controls are working today. What the screen shows is this is a default model-driven app which has been embedded inside Microsoft Teams. Now, this is an out-of-box feature and functionality. Microsoft has really made it simple to embed a model-driven app inside Microsoft Teams with just a few clicks away. If I click on the first record, I get to see some details of the application. Now, again, you will say this is a standard Microsoft Teams functionality. Where is model-driven app? Where is the collaboration controls or the power of that? The first feature that Microsoft adds is a task functionality. Within the record, I can create one or more tasks, and these tasks are associated with the record. If I click on add a task, a pop-up gets shown. I can create a new task, and then the task gets saved and associated with the record. The second functionality or the collaboration feature they bring in is the approvals functionality. This is based on Microsoft Teams approval. I can always click an approval and then raise an approval request assigned to an internal employee within the organization. And this is based on Microsoft Teams approval. It sits in Dataverse. But the idea is that the user of the application does not have to leave the record. Within the record itself, they can create a new approval. So all the features allow you to collaborate while in the context of work, in the flow of work. So it minimizes the context switching. The next feature is the files functionality. As you can imagine, behind the scenes, it is based on the SharePoint document library. For each record, a folder gets created. I can attach one or more files and then associate with the record. Behind the scenes, the collaboration control will go and save it in the right location within the SharePoint document library. And all these document library locations are configurable. The next functionality they bring in is the Teams meeting functionality. Now, quite often when I'm working on a record or a application, if I have to set up a meeting, it's my natural tendency that I go to my Outlook, I open my Outlook, configure or schedule a meeting, and then send a meeting invite. Again, you see there's a switching of context from one application to other. Also, when you get a meeting invite, there's no information or the meeting invite is not associated with the record. Few months down the line, if you want to know, there was a record called building maintenance request. How many meetings did we have to discuss? Who approved it? What was the context? That information is lost in the Outlook calendars. Now, what this control allows us is to display calendars. Then I can schedule a meeting invite right in the flow of work. Now, this meeting invite can be internal meeting invite to the internal employees of the organization. We can also schedule a meeting invite with external customers in a B2C kind of scenario. If I schedule an external meeting invite, it uses the Microsoft Bookings functionality. It sends a Teams calendar invite. The end customer, B2C customer, does not need Teams to be installed on their user machine. They can open the meeting invite in the browser and then join the meeting. The next functionality is around notes. Quite often, say you have a meeting and you want to capture the minutes of meeting associated with the meeting and associate with the record, so that it kind of creates an audit trail. So I can capture a note right away in the flow of work and then save it and then capture all the related information. So this kind of brings the entire power of different M365 features and controls to Power Apps model-driven app. This does not require a Dynamics 365 license. It requires a standalone Power Apps per user plan, which is much cheaper than the Dynamics 365 plan. It originated in Microsoft Cloud for Financial Services. If you have been exposed to Microsoft Cloud for Financial Services, there's a module called Collaboration Manager for Loans. The first application to use this was Collaboration Manager for Loans. Microsoft thought, hey, whatever we have developed is more generic. It's not only financial services customers who can leverage this functionality. Let's release it to the entire world so that whether you're in the healthcare industry or a retail industry or a manufacturing industry, you should be able to modernize your apps and then bring the collaboration features to your apps. And that is how the collaboration controls were born. It's an evolving state. In the future, in the Microsoft roadmap, they're working on a new chat experience to the collaboration controls. There'll be additional functionality which will get released. So you'll be hearing more about collaboration controls going forward in the next few major announcements which happen at Ignite. There's also a video available in the build conference. So in the build, they showed a initial public preview. So you can also watch the video which is available on the build, Microsoft Build 2022 event. Yeah. Any questions so far before I go to the other features?
We did have one question from Naveen. He asked, Naveen, did you want to unmute yourself and ask the question?
Yeah, hi, Jiva here. Thanks, Vinay, for the walkthrough on the collaboration controls. I saw your Ignite videos as well. And this is one of the main reasons, and I want to just catch up with you on this one. So that couple of things that and I feel like is missing. I'm not sure whether I'm missing it or it's the product limitation at the moment. So in the meetings feature, it doesn't have a scheduling assistant. So eventually it will lead the users to go back to the Outlook or Teams to check the others availability and again come back to the Power Apps to know and then create the meeting. So if they had brought in, if there's any way to enable or no, I'm not sure in future update release, there's a plan to bring in the scheduling assistant into the meeting. So that will really help the users to see the availability of other users when they set up the meeting.
No, good feedback. We discussed with Microsoft engineering team that feedback has been already given. I'll highlight it to the engineering team once again that users, when they schedule a meeting, they like to see the participants' availability before they can schedule. And it's probably in the Microsoft backlog, but now I cannot commit when Microsoft plans to enhance this control. This is a control which is out of the box now. Can you extend the control? The answer is no, but you can always develop your own PCF control. At the end of the day, these are simple PCF controls which Microsoft is giving you ready to use. If you have to develop your own control, you are free to look at what Microsoft gives you and then develop your own functionality. But then it's better to work with Microsoft. If you have been following the Microsoft Cloud for Financial Services, they've added a new module called Intelligent Scheduling. And today that is available only to the Microsoft Cloud for Financial Services. I hope Microsoft makes that available to the Power Platform community without requiring a Microsoft Cloud for Financial Services module.
Okay. Yeah, that is. I also sharing the feedback, trying to share the feedback with product group and see if they have this in feature release plans, on this one. And also second thing is to bring in external customers. As we know, it's depending on the Microsoft bookings. So you have to set up a bookings and then bring in the external customers. So because it's Teams feature end of the day. And one more thing, sorry, before I stop. So it basically asks for Teams group ID to set up this meeting and the control, right? So which means it is scoped within the Teams. Let's say I want to use model-driven app, but I don't need to necessarily embed it into a Teams, right? I can just use it as it is standalone app. And any reason why, if you're aware of now, why it is they're trying to scope it within a Teams rather than just keep it generic?
Good question, and that is one of the features which is Microsoft is actively working on. They want to bring it outside of Teams. So if someone wants to use it within Teams, they can very well use it. But if they don't want to use within Teams, they should be able to use it as a standalone model-driven application. And that is in the Microsoft roadmap. Again, I'm not from the Microsoft team. I don't have the exact date availability. The only reason that I'm aware of, there was also a chat control which is available if you are a private preview customer. I have a different environment where the chat control is working. The chat control had a dependency on Microsoft Teams functionality. So it used to post whatever you chat within the application, it used to post into Microsoft Teams channel that you configure. So that carried a functionality. That's why in the public preview, the chat controls or the chat features have been taken away and they're not part of the public preview. They were only available to the private preview customers. A new version of the chat control is going to get released in the future versions. Hopefully, and that should work outside of the Teams environment. Again, these are questions for the Microsoft product engineering team. I'm not representing the Microsoft product engineering team. We should probably wait for Microsoft to announce in the upcoming Ignite or keep following Stephen Early from Microsoft. He's the lead program manager, product owner for this collaboration controls.
Who's that? What is the name you're saying?
Stephen Early. I'll share the links after the call, or if you watched my build video, as you said, you watched the build video. So Stephen Ali was the lead presenter in the Microsoft build video. I had only a 4-minute slot in the larger video that, or the larger session that Stephen was conducting.
Thank you so much. It's very helpful. Yeah, thank you.
All right, I hope I answered the questions. Any more questions?
Yeah, there was one more question from Naveen. Naveen, did you want to ask the question and mute yourself? I can ask the question. So his question was, do Canvas apps don't have the capability for the collaboration controls. Is that right?
No, these collaboration controls are only available to model-driven apps. They require the Dataverse behind the scenes. They create Dataverse tables and the full-fledged, they create the plugins. They create virtual tables. There's a lot going behind the scenes. So this is not available to Canvas apps. What you can do is this is a larger model-driven app. You can always embed your Canvas app inside the model-driven app. So and you can extend the platform. Yeah.
Yep. That is all the questions we had so far.
All right. So, Geeta, how many more minutes I have for the next?
You have time. There is no upper limit. We have another hour for our UG meeting, so you're good on time.
All right. So I think the next few announcements I'll touch base. The first one is the error handling. What Microsoft did is, it was earlier in the experimental feature. Now it is a preview feature. It's getting auto enabled for all the apps. In my environment, I still need to go back and enable it, but hopefully in your tenant, it is enabled that when you create a new app, it is auto enabled. Behind the scenes, Microsoft gives you a couple of functions like error, if error, is blank on error. And then there are certain properties. So for example, if there's an error, I want to log the error or I want to display the error to the user. So I can use the first error message or I can get all error properties and then, log it or display it on the UI control. The way I've used it, I'll demonstrate two examples. Often Power Apps is used to migrate your Excel macros or your Excel spreadsheets. In an Excel spreadsheet, if an error occurs, the error is displayed right within the cell. It is not displayed at the top in the notification bar or at the bottom or somewhere. User can see that which cell is having the error. Now, if I have to replicate the same functionality, what I've done is if you look at the formula bar, I've done if error, I'm doing, this is my numerator, this is my denominator, and then I'm doing numerator divided by denominator. If there's a divide by zero error, then I'm displaying a particular error message right and within the control itself. Similarly, the other way to display an error can be that, for example, I have a unique email ID requirement which I've configured through a key in my Dataverse table. Now, when I submit the record, I can also check for if error. After I submit the record, if there is an error in submission, then I can notify the user and then display a custom error message to the user. So these are some ways in which you can use the error handling functionality. Again, you can be creative and then develop your own use cases around how you want to do the error handling in your applications. So if error, then do this, else do this, or you can chain your commands. If error, keep on doing this, else don't do this. If the first command fails, often say you have a first patch and then you have a second patch. If the first patch fails, you don't want to execute the second patch command. So you can wrap it in the if error functionality, and then if the first command throws an error, then don't even try to execute the second command. So again, all those possibilities exist with these few controls and commands that have been made available by Microsoft. The next feature that Microsoft released is a grid control. Now, if you're in a model-driven app or if you're in a Canvas app, you're displaying a list of records. Those records were read-only. Then you have to click on the record, then go into a edit mode to edit the record. Often we missed the Excel kind of functionality, or those who come from a SharePoint background. SharePoint has this concept of an editable grid where you can enable the editing inline and then you can change the values of multiple records. It makes it really easier to edit in a batch or bulk edit the records. Now, what Microsoft has done is this control is graduated to preview. You have to go to your record and then change from add the record and then configure the record to be used. Now, I'll show a quick demo. This is a screenshot from the Microsoft website. I also have it working. Now, as you can see, if there are multiple rows for which you need to update the values, this grid control makes it really easy to update the multiple values. This grid control also provides infinite scrolling functionality. So after the first say 50 or 100 records load, then the next set of records will load. So you can keep on scrolling until you find the record you're looking at and then jump into the record. So it provides infinite scrolling. Third is it allows you to display your cells in a custom UI. So for example, the out-of-the-box UI might not meet your requirements. If the value is greater than 10,000, you want to show in a different color. If the value is less than 10,000, you want to show in a different color. Or based on the priority, you want to show the entire row in a different color or the entire cell. So you can customize at the cell level. So they give you an ability to customize your UI by creating a cell level control. It's a PCF control that you have to create. I hope in the future they make it as simple as customizing a SharePoint cell in the SharePoint list where you can just write some JSON and then the UI gets updated. In Power Apps, you still have to go in, create a PCF control, but hopefully Microsoft will announce it in the future. The grid control is a new announcement. The next set of announcement, those who come from the ALM DevOps background, Microsoft has released a new version of Power Platform Build. They're calling it version 2.0. I believe the previous release was called version 0, and now they've jumped to version 2 for whatever reason. Now, along with the build controls, they have internally upgraded from using PowerShell to Power Platform CLI. What does it mean? One is the Azure GitHub Actions, not Azure GitHub, the GitHub Actions were using the Power Platform CLI. Azure DevOps in the past was using PowerShell, so they were on the two different tracks. Now both will use the Power Platform CLI going forward. Also, the Power Platform CLI, as you might know, is cross-platform, so you can also have your runners running on the Linux machines. Along with that, they released a new version of the Power Platform CLI. There's a monthly update cycle for the Power Platform CLI. The new version got released. Now, as part of the new version of Power Platform CLI, what they released is a command which will allow you to create a Canvas app for your custom connectors. So imagine a scenario, you have an API, REST API, which has several actions. You create a custom connector. Now you want to test the custom connector. So traditionally, you will have to go and create an app and then add multiple controls. Now, what this command does is behind the scenes, it goes and creates a Canvas app for you. Depending on the input and the output data types, it will also create the right controls. For example, if your input type is like an enum, it will create a drop-down box. If it is a string, it will create a string text box in your UI. And that has been launched by Microsoft as part of the new CLI. This is again just a quick demo. This is the command pack canvas create. And what you do is you have to give your app name along with the path. It will output an MS app file on your local machine. Then you have to say you want to create an app for what particular connector. So you have to give the connector name. In this case, the demo is pet store bug bash. It will go and create the MS app. Then you can open your Power Platform Studio, import the app, and you can see that the app, based on the connector action methods, the different input and output controls, it will create a demo app or a test app, which you can hand over to your test team, or you can hand over to your citizen developers to further enhance the app to meet your requirements. The last announcement, as I said earlier, is around Canvas app. Earlier, it was possible to create a Canvas app outside of Dataverse. Now, going forward, admins can enable a setting for the environment. It is an environment level setting, not a tenant level setting. So they can go to the environment settings and then enable it. So this will enforce that all the Canvas apps get created inside a Dataverse, and then by default they will go in a particular solution, the default solution which is available in each Dataverse. Microsoft, however, is strongly encouraging that you create your own solutions. Then all Canvas apps going forward should be created inside a solution. Yeah, I think those are the announcements that I wanted to highlight.
Thank you, Vinay. Anyone have any questions or thoughts or comments you'd like to share? Any feedback on those announcements?
I have a comment. So I was playing around with that, creating the app from the CLI. It's tricky getting the name of the connection. So I did it about 4 times. I had to get the right name to the connection.
Oh,
Yeah. I have a message to the program manager who wrote the article, see if we can do about that. But the other thing is that if you create the app, when you open the app up and power it in the studio, you have to still add your connection. The connection is not added to the MSAPP file automatically when you create it.
That is true. So I had the same error. So I think this is the app I created. In my case, the mistake I was doing, there's a small line which says that the connector has to be added to a solution. If the custom connector is outside the solution, then the command is not able to detect the connector. It kept saying, hey, this connector does not exist. And
Right.
this, and I was checking the name. And then in my case, what I was missing was adding the connector to the solution. So once I added the connector to the solution, it was able to detect. Now, obviously, what is not mentioned in the documentation is when you open the CLI, the first thing you need to do is authenticate with your credentials, to the environment. Otherwise, when you run the command, it doesn't know which environment, which credentials to use. The
Right.
first step to authenticate. So again, I had some initial difficulty around authentication, but I was able to overcome that. And then the second challenge I had was adding the connector to the custom solution. Now, this is the simple app. I registered with the third-party currency provider. What it also doesn't do is it takes the input and output, but then it does not display the output. So I hope in the future they also add a text box or some kind of controls which can display the output of the call to the connector. Especially for get methods, it makes sense. Post method, at least they can display whether the output was a 200 HTTP header or a different header. So again, I'll say it's a work in progress. It's a starting point. It should get announced in the future by Microsoft.
I hope so. Yeah, it's a pretty cool thing so far.
Yeah. I out sharing the screen. I didn't realize I'm not sharing the screen. So this is the app I was referring. So I created in my environment.
Mm-hmm.
Custom app. So if I have a few minutes, I'll quickly show you. So this is the
Yeah.
default read-only grid control. So as you can see in the read-only grid control, if I have to edit a record, I have to click on the record and then go on edit. Right, and that's the default functionality of how read-only grid control used to work. Now in the new world, so in this context table, I've enabled the editable grid control. Now, as you can see, I can edit through the records. If I have to edit the phone number, I don't have to leave the context. Within the context I can update. So if you have to do a bulk editing, it will really make it easier. Now I have only 15 records, but I can imagine a scenario where you have hundreds of records. You can scroll down and then continue on editing or find the right information. And there are a lot of properties they have given to the editable grid control. Now what Microsoft is planning is that first they'll achieve parity with the control which exists today. And once they achieve the parity, then they will replace the default or the current read-only control with the editable grid control in the future.
It's actually really good to see the direction Microsoft is going, right? With making it, retaining the familiarity for the users. They use SharePoint, they're used to that grid style of behavior, and then they're going the direction of making that collaborative experience consistent, no matter which service you use in the ecosystem. Just keeping that, we're getting there slowly, and thinking about like how it used to look or function a couple of years back. We've come a long way already.
True, I agree. Yeah. And this is a quick demo of that error handling I showed you. So if say numerator divider is a valid value, I showed, but if I divide by 0, so I try to mimic or replicate an Excel sheet kind of functionality where the error is shown within the cell itself. So if you have a lot of controls, and sometimes the user can be searching where is the error. If you show the error at the top, user still should struggle. This kind of highlights where is the error. So if I wanted, I could also show an error below it. I can play around with it. Again, there's more. Those who are very good at Power Effects can probably, right now I'm showing irrespective of the error, for all the errors, I'm showing the same error message. So you can probably in the future look into the first error and then look at the type of error. And then for different types of errors, show different error messages. Again, all that should be possible if you are good at Power Effects. So Geetha, that's all from my side. I think if there are no more questions, then you can continue the session.
Yeah, anybody have any questions for Vinay? And feel free to continue to drop the questions in the chat. Well, he's still going to be around, so we'll be happy to answer the questions. But thank you so much, Vinay. This is a whole load of announcements that have come in the past, and it's definitely very motivating to see. Some of them are like some of the most commonly asked user voice features, and we're seeing them uh, become reality. So I think it's a pretty good set of features for us to look forward to and play around with.
Yeah, and thanks for inviting me to the session. It was a pleasure talking to all of you. So I'll stay for the rest of the session, and then Geetha, hear you speak.
Yeah, sure. Right, just give me a minute while I queue up our presentation here. All right, so I am going to be talking about the Power Apps Creator Kit. And this is in preview currently, but I wanted to use the time to walk you through a quick overview of what the Creator Kit is, how to install, the prerequisites and things to consider, and how this can be beneficial for individual app makers or teams of makers, and no matter what the skill set is, then would touch base on each of those. So that's a quick agenda. We'll cover just the benefits and how you can get started with the kit. We'll walk through some demos, and then I also have a quick list of frequently asked questions that I had when I first started, and then I'm also seeing these questions asked in the community as well. So I thought I'd consolidate that for you guys, and then also a list of resources. Now, the Power Apps Creator Kit was released back in May, packaging up several easy-to-use components for a consistent experience on your web and mobile platforms. That link at the top is your short link to get to the Microsoft documentation on Creator Kit. You get component libraries with sample controls and Power Apps component frameworks with future code controls or custom controls built by Microsoft and community members. Plus, it also has a Fluent UI theme generator. And all the components that you see within the Creator Kit, they utilize the Fluent UI framework to provide that consistent, modern-looking user experiences. And if you are not familiar with the terminology Fluent UI, you probably recognize it as soon as you see it, because any app that you build, especially the Dataverse for Teams apps that you build in the Teams environment, has the Fluent UI controls natively available to use. And then all of our Office 365 services that you see also use the Fluent UI framework. And the way they have released this kit is in a form of a managed solution. So it comes with the component library, several commonly used Power Apps component framework controls, and then a bunch of utilities that can increase your productivity, especially when you're building applications. And a couple of things to think about when you are using the Creator Kit. Canvas apps can look different based on who makes it. And if you have multiple makers in your organization and you don't have a guided path or a theme as a starter for makers, it's highly possible that you'll end up having a variety of app look and feels. Plus, if you're not a designer like me, not a web designer by profession, it takes time to actually come up with a more modernized UI UX. And this kit solves these challenges. And one thing to note here is that you don't want to look at this kit as just a bunch of controls and app templates to start with. Also look at the wider, bigger picture around this whole Creator Kit. How this can actually drive maker adoption, which in turn impacts some percentage of your Power Platform adoption as well at your orgs. And if you're just starting with the journey, or if you're far into the journey of using Power Platform, you will know that makers come with all sorts of skill sets. It could be someone starting as a business user wanting to delve into app making for personal productivity because it's low code, or a pro dev who wants to get the best out of the rapid app dev use cases, or they have certain components that they want to build and want to top it with Power Apps and enable their team to work with it. And then with any platform, it always takes a bit of learning curve when it comes to, even if it's low code, for you to know the basics of how to connect and integrate with data. And a lot of times you have new makers who have trouble knowing where to start or what to look for, and things like that. And this kit, once in GA, will be an ideal starting point because it comes with a reference app that has best practices and sample codes that you can look at as you start your journey for making apps, and then also makers can use that as a way to ramp up on their app making skills. So it's a great way to start with that template. And because it's in preview now, it's not recommended for production use, and it, it may also have some restricted functionality at this point, but the team has constantly been pushing updates. And if you're wanting to report an issue, there is a GitHub resource, and I've linked to that in the end of the slide here, where you can go create an issue. And they've been pretty active on the GitHub link over there on their issues and discussions forum, making sure that they provide feedback and take feedback as well. And this is in preview, so a good way for you to get started would be to sign up for a community plan or a developer plan. If you just want to play around with it and see how it works, that way you have access to Dataverse. You can spin up an environment, drop the creator kit, and then just start using it, like creating apps, and take a peek at how Microsoft has built some of the controls and components and what patterns they're using in the PowerFX code. And then there's also a way for you to look at the code and reuse that in other apps that you'd want to use. So it's a pretty good set of recommended practices that you can follow. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. And another note that I have there is also to remember that this is currently not supported by Microsoft support. And that's one of the reasons why it's still in preview. So it would be at your own disposal if you're using in a production scenario. Before I move on, I'll just take a quick stop there. Any questions so far? Yes. Question is your hands raised. Yeah.
Yeah, I tried to open that app that was in the screenshot in the previous slide.
Mm-hmm.
And it asked me to enable the code component first in the settings.
Yes, that's correct. That's on my in the prerequisite. This slide actually has the call out for that. That is needed because there are code components or custom controls that are part of the kit, and you need to have that enabled in an environment, because especially when you have no control over what services those code components are using, and you don't want them to access any tokens or any sensitive material that can be exposed in the Maker Studio. So for that reason, it requires that feature to be turned on in the environment. And I'll walk you through how you can go turn it on as well. So that is one of the first prerequisites to turn that on before you get started with the template.
Thank you, Geetha.
Yeah, sure. All right. Any other questions? If not, I'll continue down the next slide here. So this next slide here is about what you need to know to get started, right? So what are the prerequisites? So you definitely need an environment with a Dataverse database. So either you start with a developer plan, or you have an environment that you can spin up with the Dataverse and database in your organizational tenant, then you should be able to do that. And then just like how Gulshan had mentioned before, you have to enable the Power Apps component framework feature before you import the solution. Because if you try to import the solution without having that enabled, you are not going to see some of those controls load properly. And then if you are trying to store some of those controls back into your, or add them into your new Canvas apps, you're going to see that is not going to work as expected. And then to be able to use the Creator Kit components, like to be able to actually make sure that you open up the reference app and the components and go, if you want to do all the digging, you have to have a system customizer role in that environment to be able to install and then go make some, if you're trying to play around with the actual components itself. And then apart from that, you do need a valid Power Apps license for Microsoft 365. So your regular Office 365 SKU that gives you access to create Power Apps is more than enough to get started. But we will talk in detail about when you might end up needing a premium license. We'll take a look at that later. But for you to be able to use majority of the components that come with the Creator Kit, a regular any Office 365 SKU license that enables you to create Power Apps in an environment should be good. And then here are the bunch of things that come with it. You have a reference Canvas app. And that is used. It's more like an interactive app that you can use to learn with, and we'll take a look at that and how you can get the most out of it. And then there are templates that you can get started with. So there's one for Canvas app, and then there's also one for a model-driven app custom page as well. So you could use that template starter app, save it as a new app, and then start adding your screens and reuse those controls if you want the whole Fluent UI theming in your apps. Now, if you notice in the Dataverse for Teams, when you create a Power App in the Teams environment, you'll notice that all of your controls have the Fluent UI controls or the framework in it, because as you drop the button, they look a lot different from your native Canvas apps. But to be able to use that in your native Canvas apps, your Creator Kit and the template starter app is your best way to do it, because that way the template app comes with those controls in it already, and you're able to just start using them. And then does come with the component library. There are several of those most commonly used components available, like the header, and you'll see a bunch of them when we go through the demo. And then there's also custom controls, which are code components that Microsoft's put together, and these are more like a Power Apps component framework controls that are also available for you to use. And then finally, they have a Fluent design theme editor. So that gives you access to a theme, which is adjacent, that you can use to consistently style your components and your screens as you build your apps. And we'll take a look at how you can do that as well. And then always a good place to start is the reference app. That's always a good place to start as a template, and then learn how your components behave, and then how those patterns are implemented for those controls, and then look at the code and try and see if you can replicate that. So that's definitely a lot to learn on that end. All right, so let me do, before I get on to the FAQs, what I'm going to do is quickly jump over to show a demo. So let's first, I'm going to pull over my screen here. So I'm on the link that I had on the slide earlier, which is a short link for the Creator Kit overview, and there's a link to download it. And what that does is downloads a zip folder, which is your managed solution. And then when you go into your environment, your Power Platform tenant, you should be able to import that solution into the environment. But you want to remember that your environment should have a Dataverse database. And then the way for you to go and enable the Power Apps code component feature is to go into your admin center. And if you don't have access, or you don't have the system admin role, you may want to ask someone, or your Drupal tenant admin or your Power Platform admin to do that. So I'm going to go into my environments and click on my developer tenant environment that I have. And let's go to settings. And then if you just start searching for the component framework, it should get us to features. And then at the very bottom, you'll see that there is the feature here, which I already have turned on. So that's the feature that you should have turned on, that is allowing to publish your Canvas apps with code components for this kit to work with apps that you build. So you want to make sure that you turned on. And once that's done and you import your solution, you will notice a bunch of components in there. So we have about 3 apps. There's the Fluent Theme Designer, you have the reference app, which you can use to learn, and then also the template app that you can use as a starter template. And then there's also a component library, and then there's a sample for a custom page as well, and then a bunch of custom controls. So let's take a look at the Fluent Theme Designer. I already have them opened up, just queued up in the interest of time. So this is the app. I just hit the play on the app and it opens up in the play view. You'll notice that you have the primary color, text color, and background color. So it's just 3 features that you can change and play around with the colors if needed. And this gives you an overview of how the components are going to look and feel in your app if you're going to continue to use these. At the bottom, you'll notice that it also has an accessibility checker, which is an important aspect of building apps, wanting to make sure that your apps are accessible to everyone. And so this also does a pretty good job of telling you if the contrast ratios that you've picked fall within the guidelines of it being an accessible app. What I'm going to do is go ahead and see if I can switch it over to a more dark mode, and let's go ahead and change the colors a little bit. And I will use something like that. Yeah, and then you can see that right now it shows like my the color scheme that I've used is quite accessible. But if I were to go and pick a more sometimes you might think it's quite legible enough, but it doesn't fall within the minimum contrast of 4.5 or within your web accessibility content guidelines. So this is a good way to check and make sure that you're able to capture the right colors for your scheme. And go ahead and flip that off. And then at the bottom here, you'll notice that it has your palette slots. So if you ever need to know, if there are certain controls where you have the hex code that you can copy paste if you need to reuse this at another spot, or if you want the RGBA codes, you're also able to capture that from here. And then one important thing to note here is the export theme. So this generates the whole block, this code block of properties. It's more like a JSON with the JSON object with key value pairs that you can use, which you can pretty much just copy paste into your app on start and just initialize a global variable and reference your controls to use this palette as well. Another thing to note here is this is not limited to just the creator kit components or controls that you use. You're able to use the same the theme or the code block that you have for other controls outside of the creator kit as well, because these are this is essentially just a variable that you're initializing with the properties that you can reference for any other controls. So that's the Fluent UI generator there. And then I am going to go to our reference app. So I have that open. So this is one of the other apps that you'll see that's part of the creator kit. And there are a bunch of basic input controls that you can see. There's commands and menus and navigation, and you see several of those most commonly used components that you see being used in majority of your apps that you can reuse from here and have a more consistent look and feel across your applications in your organization. Now, this is a good example of an auto width label. So right here is a label with some text there, and then there's that icon to just show you where the text ends. You could dynamically set what the width needs to be based on the number of words that you want to allow, and then it kind of just changes the auto width. So that's just a way for you to see how this simple control works. And you can take a peek at the code as well. So and on this is a full snapshot of the code itself. And then how you can use the code here is to look at the properties and then what the values are from the properties. So you could copy paste the values. Like, for example, the text here says this is the value that you would want to copy paste if you're using the control, and if you want to reuse some of the actions in that box that you see for the configuration properties when you add the component. So that's just another way for you to just peek into the code, look at the patterns that they've implemented. So a lot of them already use best practices. And then at the top section, you'll see they have a listing of what are the do's and don'ts as well. So this gives you a good overview of what the best practices are when you are calculating the width of a label text and how you can show content aligned and things like that. And then what you shouldn't do in terms of, using this inside a horizontal gallery. And if that's the case, then use a different control, and which is a tag list, which is also another component that you can use that's available as part of the creator kit. So it's a pretty good way to see what the recommended best practices are, and then have them implemented in your applications. Another one here is also the breadcrumb. So you notice that they already have a component out there that builds out the breadcrumb based on the values that you'd want to pass. And then here are some sample values that they have. You could choose to reduce the width of the breadcrumb, or you could also specify how many items you want to show. So for example, if I want to show 3 items, then it only shows 3 items and then blocks the other 2. So these are just ways for us to configure the component as needed. And then the same goes here as well. You are able to look at the code to look at what the properties have been, what the PowerFX code is to set those properties, and you should be able to like copy paste those into your applications and reuse them as needed. All right, before I jump on to the next demo, take a quick stop here. Anyone have any questions? All right. Let's move on to the next component here. So they do have the component library as part of the Creator Kit. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up. Give that a minute while it opens up. Just trying to load the library itself so you can take a look at all the different options that they have there. Yeah, so you'll see these are the different components that come with the library. There's a spinner control, there's an expand menu control that you can use, and you can see all the custom properties that have been defined that you are allowed to set dynamically as needed when you incorporate these components into your app. And then there's also a dialog box that you can set up. There's a progress indicator. You can also build a custom icon if needed. So there's a bunch of these components that are already available for you to use. All you need to do is just drop them into your apps and configure the properties as needed, and it should work seamlessly. What I wanted to do is create a new app and try and add a regular component, and then also add a custom code component and see how it works. So let's go ahead and go to apps. I am going to go to my app section here. Let's go create a blank app, and I am going to call it RDFW UG demo. Let's go ahead and create that. Now what I'm doing is I'm not starting from a starter template. I'm just using a brand new app and trying to use the components from the kit. So here's my app here. I have a blank screen. What I can do is go over to insert the components, and here at the bottom is a way for you to get more components. And this lists all the components that come with the library. So I'm going to go ahead and choose the expand menu, and let's go ahead and import that. And that should drop our expand menu with the sample data that was already configured. But you're able to use that and change the values as needed. Now, as soon as I did that, it did add a new option for me called the library components. And then I see my component right here, and I am just going to add that back to my screen. And then right now, I actually do have this component listed. Now, if I were to expand, it expands it. So, that's how the default behavior is set up to be. And then you can see the properties on this. So, for example, I can say, always leave it to be expanded, for example. And then there's something going on with this control. That icon isn't showing up. Now, these are reminders to us that this is still in preview, so things may not work the same. Just going to see if yeah, there we go. It just needed a little refresh and it showed up. But yeah, that's just an indication that, there's always going to be little quirky things here and there, especially when a feature is in preview, but they've been continuously pushing updates and fixes. So hopefully we're in GA pretty soon and we're able to all reuse it. So that's the example for the expand menu. So we've added a library, one of our component items from our component library. Now I'm going to go ahead and add a code component as another example. So when you go over to the same section by going to get more components, you'll notice that there is a separate tab to add your code components. So these are the code components that are built with the PCF framework, which is the Power Apps component framework. And we should be able to add here are all of the custom controls that have been added. So you'll notice a bunch of them that the Parquet team has already added for us. I'm going to go ahead and add the resizable text area, for example. And then it dropped in a new section for me called the code components. And then now I should be able to add that. And you'll notice there are a bunch of properties here that I can set. What I'm going to do is change one setting here. Let's say I only want this text box to resize horizontally. And then let's assume that you have a form and you want this feature that's not available out of the box, but you want for the user to be able to resize the box as needed if they need more real estate to view the text that they're working with. So let's say, for example, I am going to pull in a generic text to be able to paste it. Let's go ahead and play this. So I'm going to paste my text here, but you notice that now I can expand it horizontally. And then I should be able to like change the, go back to the screen here. And then let's go ahead and change the thing to say both, just to allow it to resize both ways. And then when I expand it now, I have a fully resizable text box that, and a very good example of where this can be used is for if you have a custom form for sending an email and you have a to address, and then you want to give them a box, a text box where they can type in the body, which is plain text, then you should be able to provide this where they can expand the text and have as much of content or characters that they would want to, and then giving them the ability to resize as needed. So that's just another example of how you could use a code component in the Creator Kit. So there are several of them. You know, we looked at that. There's also one that's quite interesting is the let's go back, the keyboard shortcuts. So there is one control that you can use to capture keyboard shortcuts and take some actions based on the keyboard shortcuts. So that's definitely another control to look at too, because you know those are things that are not available out of the box, and you need some custom code components to be able to track that. So that's the demo on how you could use your Creator Kit, whether it's components or custom code components, and how you can add them and use them, and also change them if needed, and configure them based on the properties that are already available. So this actually kind of just revolutionizes how makers can start thinking about making apps, makes it a lot easier on them to get started with best practices already implemented. And now they can reuse these components and start building out applications with in a much faster way, and not have to worry about figuring out how to make them more modern looking, especially when it comes to Canvas apps. Let me switch back over to our slide here. So I think one of the last items that I had was the FAQs. So just wanted to list that out. I think the very first question is the one that Goshen had, where you downloaded the kit and you want to be able to use it, but you don't see either the components in the apps on the kit solution itself, or you're not able to add those components into your solution, and that's because you don't have the code components enabled. So that's something you have to do it. Now, if you've already imported the Creator Kit, before you enable that solution, the way for you to work with it would be to delete the solution, go enable the code component feature in the environment, and then re-import the solution, and that should work. And then I think the other question that we've seen is, will the native Canvas app controls adapt the Fluent UI? Because today in the Teams environment, when you add a Power App, they natively come with the Fluent UI controls, but unlike the Canvas app. So eventually on the roadmap, they do have the idea of moving it all to more Fluent UI-based controls, even for Canvas apps. But until then, you should be able to use the Canvas template that comes with the kit if you want to use the Fluent UI controls. Or there are also other ways to do it. If you open up your Teams Power App, you can copy paste controls into your Canvas apps, and that retains the Fluent UI controls as well. The third question over there is something that I had too when I was getting started and getting ramped up on this, is how does the deployment work if your target environment does not have Creator solution deployed? So what if you don't have access or the rights to deploy the Creator Kit into your target environments? Then the way to do it is to either deploy the Creator Kit first into your target environment before you import your solution, or add your existing components, the ones that you've used in your app, individually into your unmanaged solution before you export it as a managed solution. So it's two ways to do that. And then this last question here is, what licensing do I need to use the Creator Kit? For majority of the components that you're seeing there, be it code components or the component library controls, you should be fine to use them with your regular Power App license. The licensing is dictated by the premium data sources that you're using within the application. So if you are using an application that's using SharePoint as a data source and you're wanting to use the Creator Kit, your regular Microsoft 365 SKU'd licenses or the seeded licensing would work. You don't need to have any premium licensing to be able to use the kit. But if your application is using a premium data source, like say, for example, Azure SQL, then your licensing your end users will need a premium license to be able to use it. It doesn't impact what components that they can use. But one thing to note is when you are in the Creator Kit starter template, and I will open that up shortly just to show you how that works. I actually already have the starter template. So this is the starter template that comes with the kit that you can use, wherein you can create a copy of the template and then import it into your solution, because the template is originally part of a managed solution. So you'd have to make a copy and then import it. But when you use that, it comes with two screens. It has the template screen, which is, comes with some of your responsive containers, and then the header. And then there's also a control screen that shows all of your Fluent UI controls that you can use. So you could delete some of the screens. You could add your own new screens to the starter template and start building your application. But the thing to note here is the actual starter template, has these data sources from Dataverse added to it. So if you are a regular user in the environment trying to use the starter template as a way to use the creator kit, then you're going to need the premium licenses if you're starting from a starter template. Unlike the one example that I showed, where you're able to start with a blank app and then start using the kit, you're fine. And the other way to do it is you can get rid of these data sources. I mean, the reason they have that is because they're just using that in the sample screen that they have for the controls. You could get rid of that in the starter template and then continue to use that as your starting point for building the apps. So you get to use all of the components and all the Fluent UI controls and things like that. So that is just a quick overview of what licensing, or how licensing works with the Creator Kit. And then I think the last question there was, when will it be GA? That's a question I have too, and I'm really looking forward for it to be generally available. If anyone on the call has an idea of when that will be GA, then I would be happy to hear that. All right, I will take a pause. Looks like everybody, no one really knows when it's going to be GA, but just see if anyone has any thoughts or questions or just feedback on how the Creator Kit works, and if you've tried it, I'm happy to hear that.
I think you provided the answer, the very first bullet point here. I think when it initially came out and I installed it, it looks like it wasn't installed properly, and I was wondering what exactly is it doing, because some of the things were not visible. So I'm going to try and sort of deleted it just now, so I'm trying to re-import, and I think it's a newer version. So let's hope that it's issue, because I was not able to see the left-hand side navigation at all, and simply wasn't making sense without it, because I didn't know that it was missing in the first place. But now that I've seen your demo, now I know what to expect, and then I'll see if I can replicate it.
Oh, absolutely. And I think what they've also done is, I think the very initial versions didn't have this, but the newer versions have a pop-up telling you that you need to have the code component enabled. It's like a dialog window that pops up as soon as you open the template. So it's I think that was a good add-on to the new version. That way, everyone's aware that you have to have that enabled, otherwise you're not going to see the components. It can get easily missed in the documentation and it may not be that obvious when you're working with it.
Thanks very much, Geetha.
Yeah, no problem. Anyone else have any questions? We have some more time if anybody wants to use the time to questions or want to see something, do a deep dive, things like that.
I think we need to try it first to try and understand ourselves and get our hand dirty, and then only I think we'll have more questions.
Yeah, sure. Hey, Fernando, I just saw your message there. I hope you feel better. And thanks for always supporting the user group. It's always a pleasure to see you join our user group, and I'm glad you find it helpful to join our UGs and learn from each other. All right, so if we don't have any questions, here are some resources. These are just pointing you to videos from the Parquet team on the Creator Kit, and then there's also a video from April Dunham who does an overview of the Creator Kit, and then here are a bunch of links that you could use to get to the just get started with using the kit itself. And I will paste them in the chat shortly, and it should be accessible even after the meeting ends. And then also, if any of you are not a member of the group yet, feel free to scan the code or use the link to be able to join the user group and be a member. So that way you're notified every time we meet, and you can stay up to date on the next upcoming events. But that is all that I had.
Thank you. I have one last question, Geetha.
Sure.
Where are these session recordings shared? If you please share them.
Yeah, in the user group portal. So we have a Dallas Fort Worth user group portal, and then you will see that usually once the recording is out, I mean, if you're following me or my colleague on the on LinkedIn, you should see us post that the recordings are up. But on our user group portal, which is the Microsoft's Power Platform user group portal, we post them up there, and it's on the YouTube channel as well, which is the Artist Consulting YouTube channel.
Please, could you share the link in the chat?
Yeah, let me
Thank
drop
you.
that. I was just grabbing it.